Vantage Point Outdoors is brought to you by Woody Sporting Goods and Matthew Solo Can. Kishel's Quality Animal Scents and Lures, Magnus Broadheads. HME Products and HHA Sports Optimizer Sighting Systems. K-Tech Designs, Bowfinger Archery. Black Eagle Arrows and Bob's Custom Calls. Rough Ridge, Beyond Backwoods Productions. Southern Ohio Outfitters and Kentucky Legacy Outfitters. Scent Lock and Covert Scouting Cameras.
Because I got verifiable buck sign.
And you've got black on, you're virtually almost invisible.
It's April 2013. Our snow is finally gone here in northern New York, and spring is finally upon us. It's a great time of year to get in the woods, start doing our scouting, start hanging tree stand locations for next deer season, and it's also a great time of year to keep shooting our bows and getting ready to chase longbeards. Alright, well here we are. Today is it's April 6th, and our snow just melted probably about a week ago or so. And I'm coming out to my woods here today. I've got a spot that I located this past winter while I was out doing a little snow scouting adventure. And I got a spot down here right in the middle of a thick swamp, which is a real narrow little pinch point in between two ridges. This should be an excellent location next year during the rut. So I'm going to head in there, get myself a tree stand set up, so I'll be ready to go come next November. You know, tree preparation and tree stand placement are two topics that I think are very under talked about in mainstream hunting media, you know, especially when you're hunting pressured areas like here in New York, or several of our pro staff members are from Pennsylvania. You know, these are very heavily pressured states that see a lot of hunting pressure, and the deer, especially the mature deer, they just simply act differently than mature deer in those lightly hunted Midwestern states. And without any question, tree preparation and tree stand placement are the two most critical factors to being a successful whitetail hunter in these areas. Now, one thing you'll notice is that on my way in here to this spot is you'll see that the ground cover here is pretty thick, a lot of berry briars. And what I do is, you know, every late summer I'll come in here with a handheld weed whacker and I'll trim little walking trails throughout this property and make little strategic paths that I'll use to get to and from my tree stands. It just allows me to get into these spots quieter, with leaving less human scent in the ground. And there's no question that these little paths, having good entrance routes and exit routes from your tree stands, is critical to allowing those tree stands to be hunted numerous times during the year. It doesn't do you any good to hunt a spot over again if you've ruined it on the first setup. So I like using these little handheld, you know, weed whacker trimmed trails that make my job getting in and out of my spots a whole lot easier.
Now let's join Pro Staff member Don Moore for some tips on ground blind hunting and decoy placement.
It's April 6th, and I'm out here just practicing from the sitting down position like I'm going to be in the blind. For most of us, we just got done deer hunting and we really haven't shot too much, so we're used to practicing and shooting out of a tree stand. So now's a good time. I got almost 3 weeks before the season comes in for turkey, so I want to get set up here and practice taking some shots from the sitting down position, so when I have my chair set up in the blind, I'll be used to getting the correct form and using the right techniques. What I like to do is get yourself a nice little chair with a back on it so it's nice and comfortable. And I'll show you a little bit here whenever I put this in a blind, but for right now I'm out here in the open. You can see I'm going to be shooting this way. I'm right-handed, so I'm going to be shooting this way. So I like to have my chair pointing straight across. That way there, whenever I go to shoot, I can pull back. I got free range out the blind. If you're looking straight on like this, it's harder to pull the bow back and you don't have as much mobility. So try to set yourself up where you're looking, if you're right-handed, set yourself up where you're looking out the blind like this. You got a nice back to lean up on. You're nice and comfortable. And then when that turkey comes out and he gets around your decoys, all you have to do is just get your bow into position. And make the shot. But the main thing I want to get is make sure you get yourself a nice chair. Got a back on it, nice and sturdy. Because if you're going to be in a blind, more than likely you're going to be there for at least a couple hours. And if you don't have a good chair, it gets really uncomfortable. So get yourself a good chair with a back on it. And make sure you practice shooting out of the sitting down position. You know, if you don't like it this way, try it put your chair another angle or whatever until you get to where you're comfortable. This is just how I do it. This is what, gives me the most range of motion from a sit down position. If I have to adjust myself in the blind, then of course I'm going to do that. But this is how I like to be set up in the blind for when that time comes to make the shot. Okay, I'm set up in my blind. As you can see, I got my black on. I like to wear black. Some people still will wear their camo when they're in a blind, but almost all the blinds, I don't think there's any that don't, but they all have the black interiors on them. So when you have the windows and everything closed, I have them open a little bit now just to let a little bit of light in for filming purposes. But when you have them all closed up and you got black on, you're virtually almost invisible. So I like to wear my black when I'm in a blind. You can see that I am in my chair. I got my chair set up just like I talked about earlier. I have it set up where I'm ready for my shot. You know, I can see everything out here in front of me, and I can see everything out there in front of me. I'll show you my decoys set up here in a little bit, but for now I just want to get back to the purpose of shooting out of the chair, how to set the chair up in the blind. I also want to show you, I use two different ways. It just depends on how many cameras I have with me and whatnot when I set up. I have a ground blind holder where I set my bow in the holder, and then I can just pull it off whenever I need to make the shot. I also have a ground blind holder that attaches to the top of the blind on one of the rods, and it's almost like a hook that you hang your bow in on your tree stand. So sometimes I'll use them both, and then I'll just set up whatever makes me more comfortable with the position that I'm in. So a lot of times I'll carry them both with me in my backpack. But they're really nice features to have, just in case. You never know what situation you're going to run into when you're hunting, especially when you're hunting turkeys. So I like to have it set up to where if the bow's hanging there, I can just boom. One reason for that is because I'm used to doing it whenever I'm in my tree stand, so it's just a natural fluid movement. With the ground stake, it's a little bit different because you're not used to using it. It's a different angle than your hook is up there. So, but it's all what makes you comfortable. They're two great products to use when you're in a blind, and it's just whatever you feel comfortable using. So that's pretty much it for setting up inside the blind. The chair, how to set the chair up for your shot. Right now we're going to get into discussing some decoy setups.
Alright, now this spot that I'm coming into today, it's a little narrow, very thick little swamp that's probably only about 100 yards wide across there, and it's in between two ridges, and it should be a phenomenal place to hunt come the rut, you know, when bucks are, you know, cruising through those thick areas looking for receptive does. And I'm going to come in here today, set this tree up to hunt next fall, and I'll probably only come back in here one more time very early spring or maybe midsummer, and I'll just fine tune the tree, you know, get my bow hook in there, and you know, get my get my gear accessory hooks up in the tree, and just make sure the tree's ready to go come hunting season. And then I'll stay out of there all summer, and I won't go back to that spot until late October this coming year, and hopefully get a shot at a nice buck. Alright, now I just came in here and looked around a little bit when I found this spot, and I already found a pretty nice rub from last season about 20 yards from the tree that I just picked out to hunt from next year. So just off the bat, right off the bat, I know this is going to be a good spot because I got verifiable buck sign that there was a buck traveling through this little pinch point last fall. And I didn't hunt here last fall. I didn't even find the spot until just last. Was in here end of last December, about a month after deer season. I came in here on a late winter scouting trip, and I found this spot. And it looks like a real good spot. It's real thick, which is the #1 key I look for in a tree stand location, especially during the rut. Is I'm looking for basically the thickest, nastiest brush I can find. And as you can see, we got it here. I mean, theoretically, from the ground, I mean, you couldn't shoot any more than really, honestly, 10 yards in front of you in any direction here, if that far. So hopefully, what I'm going to do today is get this tree stand set up, and I'm going to come in here again later on this spring, just one other day, and I'm going to really fine-tune this stand, get some good shooting lanes cleared out, you know, get the tree all set up as far as my bow holders and my bow hooks, and I won't come into this spot the entire summer or even early fall. I'm going to target this spot as a hunting location late October into early November, when those big bucks start getting on their feet and start moving around during daylight hours. So, all right, let's go over there and get this tree set up.
Okay, you can see I got my decoys set up out here. I got my breeding pair over to the right, and I got my 2 hens and another jake off to the left. Now when I'm setting up my decoys, what I like to do is, if I'm going to use them all like this, I like to put them in 2 groups. I like to have one group off to my right and another group right off to my left. That way, if the birds come in from either side, you know, you should get a pretty good shot. No matter which one they decide to come to, they should circle around and give you a pretty good shot. Now, what I like to do is, I don't set my decoys out any further than 20 yards. And the reason for that is because you're trying to get them birds in as close as you can to you, so you can make a nice, clean, ethical shot. So the closer that they are to you, the better off you're going to be. And if you got a gobbler out there, decoy, when a gobbler comes in, he's going to circle it, just like a big buck circles another buck. He's going to come around and he's going to circle it, and he's going to always come toward the front of it. He's not going to come in from, you know, behind it, so you don't have to try to worry about getting a shot, you know, behind the tail feathers of your decoy. He's going to circle it, and he's going to look it face to face in the eye. Hopefully, whenever he makes his circle and he comes around to get in front, you know, and the fan's facing you, then you can pull your bow back without him seeing you, and you'll be able to get a nice clean shot. I'm going to discuss shot and arrow placement after this segment here, but for now, one thing I see a lot of guys do, which makes absolutely no sense at all, is they only have one decoy and it's a jake. Well, that's okay if you're not going to call, but if you're out there making hen calls and you have a jake decoy out, it's not very realistic. So when it comes to decoy placement and using decoys, it's a strategy, just like anything else. It's part of your strategy that's going to help you hopefully get a shot at a bird. So take everything into consideration. Don't just go out there and slap them down, you know, not worrying about how you're set up. Think about it. Think about where you're putting them. If the gobbler's out there, you know, 100 yards or 60 yards, if you're in the woods, can he see them? You know, that's the biggest thing. If the gobblers don't see them, they're not going to come to them. And you got to remember, when we're turkey hunting, you know, we're doing it backwards to begin with. We're supposed to go to the hens, and we're fighting this system right there because we want the gobblers to come to us. So think about it before you just slap them into the ground, and put them where you know they're going to be seen. It's really windy today, as you can see. I mean, my blind's going all over the place. If it's not windy, try to set your decoys up to where they're facing you, so that if a gobbler's out there, you know, he sees your decoys facing the opposite of him, facing the other direction, which should pull him closer. You don't want your decoys facing out to him, because he's going to think that you're going out there in that direction and you should be heading to him. So always make your decoys face either to you, or maybe at a quarter an angle, so that they'll come in to you and not expect you, they want to see the decoys and say, oh, well, they're already heading my way, so I'm just going to wait for them. Okay, so that's another thing to keep in mind whenever you're setting up your decoys. Try to put them, like I said, within 20 yards so that you can get 15 to 20 yard shot tops. If you're really lucky, you might get a 10-yard shot. You can, if you're hunting a bird in the same place, like say if you're in a field and you're hunting them every day and you're constantly using the same decoy setup, you got to switch it up. I mean, if you're out there with just one hen, then go with 2 hens, go with 3 hens. Add a jake, add a full strut gobbler, something that'll make it different, something that might entice him, to come in. Because a lot of birds, they've seen decoys before, and if you're just using the same setup every day, then they're not going to give in and not going to come in unless they get really hot and excited one day and you get lucky. So, always try to mix and match your decoys. Save them, you might save your full strut, use it the first day, and if that don't do no good, try it again a week later even, if you're in the same spot. But mix and match your decoys. Don't use the same setup all the time. Give them something different, and you just might entice that bird that's hanging up, all the time. He might see something that he likes. A lot of birds are different, Some birds will be intimidated by a full strut gobbler. Even if they're a big gobbler themselves, they'll still be intimidated. Other birds, they see it, they'll come running in because, they don't want nobody taking over their hens. So don't be afraid to mix and match. Don't be afraid to try something new, and you'll see that your results are better off from it.
There's another tip that I want to share with you guys that has really helped me set up tree stands a lot quicker and a lot more efficiently the last few years, and it's a little device called a Step Master. It's made by a company called XP Outdoors, and what you do with this thing is it's got a little magnet here on it. The device itself is made out of a real heavy-duty polycarbonate material. It's very sturdy. It'll hit up to any kind of abuse that you can put it through. But what you do with this thing is you simply take your traditional tree stand peg and you put it into the step starter, and you got a magnet which catches that step. So now this gives you a lot more leverage when you're slamming this peg up against trees. It allows you to start the tree step a whole lot easier. You don't have to take your fingers and your hands and really grind that step in there anymore. If you have a step starter, get that peg in there and just hammer away, and you can start a step in one swing in literally about 1/10 of the time that it would typically take you. And if you factor that up, 1/10 of the time, over 15, 16 pegs, climbing a tree 30 feet in the air, and you can save yourself a lot of time and a lot of energy, setting up your tree stands. This way here you can put up more tree stands in a day and do it quicker, do it more efficiently, do it quieter, and it just makes for an overall much greater experience out here hanging up tree stands. And it's got a little foldable handle here to make it a little bit more easy to pack away. And what this handle also does is once you get the peg started, it allows you to grab this handle, and it allows you to really screw that tree, to get that peg in that tree a whole lot easier and a whole lot quicker. So if you're in the market, they make a few different versions of these. I've seen 4 or 5 different versions of these. Companies make various versions, but I've had this one called the Step Master, and I've had this for 4 or 5 years now, and this thing has been absolutely worth its weight in gold when it comes to hanging up and placing tree stands.
Now the most important element of putting up a tree stand is doing it safely. When I'm climbing climbing pegs, I like to always maintain one hand and 1 foot on 2 separate pegs at all times. This way here, in the event that I lose grip with 1 foot or 1 hand, I always have another foot or hand maintaining contact with the peg, keeping me safe. And although I wasn't wearing a safety vest on this tree stand setup because I was comfortable working in this tree, I always recommend wearing either a safety harness or a lineman's belt to help maintain your safety setting up tree stands. When preparing a tree for a tree saddle, you want your top 3 or 4 pegs to be in a straight line with equal spacing, and these pegs are going to act as your tree stand base, which maintains your leverage in the tree. And no tree stand setup can be complete without a quality handsaw, which allows you to trim unnecessary tree limbs that are in the way of you moving into position for a shot or keeping you quiet while in the tree. This foldable HME portable handsaw has been an invaluable tool in helping me remove unwanted tree limbs and brush from my tree stand locations. And these HME hand pruners are a great tool to let you really fine-tune your brush removal and pick out individual twigs and tree limbs which are preventing shot opportunities and also will brush up against you while you're moving in your tree stand and can cause deer to alert from the presence of these limbs moving around. Having a well-equipped tree preparation pack will also make you much more efficient at setting up tree stand locations. In my pack, I like to carry a few extra hand pruners and tree saws, a couple of GPS units to help me navigate through thick cover, a safety device such as this lineman's belt when I'm climbing particularly dangerous trees or preparing trees in wet conditions when tree bark can be very slippery. And I always carry approximately 2 dozen tree pegs with me so I can set up numerous locations on a single day scouting. That's the sign that you're looking for when you're into these tight spots trying to find good tree stand locations. You're looking for these thick areas where bucks are going to feel comfortable traveling during daylight. And when you find rubs and you find a lot of deer droppings, you know, that just helps verify that you're in a good spot. And from there it's as simple as getting a good tree prep, making sure you got yourself some good background cover. As you just saw, we got plenty of cover there in that tree. And I'll be hunting about 25 feet up in my tree saddle, so I'm going to be in a good spot, and I'm not going to hunt this spot until late October. I'm thinking October 23rd on is when I'm going to start hunting this location, because up until that point in these pressured areas, I really don't think you've got a real good chance of catching a buck on his feet during daylight, no matter what kind of location you're hunting in. Even though this is a very thick area, you know, I just think early season, early October, during that October lull, you just have a very small percentage chance of catching a target buck on his feet during daylight hours. So I like to save these spots for prime time, late October through the rut. And I'll hunt, you know, satellite stands, you know, secondary locations that are easy to get to and where I still have a chance of killing a deer because I'm in the woods hunting, but I'm not over hunting and pressuring my good areas. Alright, now all I'm doing right now is I'm just walking a few of these man-made trails that I made last fall. I made a series of trails throughout this property, you know, through this thick briar patch, you know, undergrowth, and
these paths, they allow me to, walk on this property, pretty freely, and making a lot less noise and a lot less disturbance. And what I'm doing is I'm just walking these paths, trying to find any possible shed antlers, and I'm looking for rubs, scrapes, deer droppings, and runways. All key pieces of sign that are important to locate during this early spring time period before you get to the spring green up, which usually here in northern New York happens first part of May usually, before we really get much of a green up. So I like to use the time period from just after the snow melts right through until pretty much the beginning of turkey season to do a bulk of my scouting. I'll come out and I'll try to find, like I said, rubs, scrapes, runways, deer droppings. All these things stand out easier before you get all that, new green vegetation growing. So, and on this farm here, most of my tree stand locations are already pretty much established and already set up. So, I won't be doing a whole lot of tree prep on this farm here now through turkey season, but I did want to get this tree here prepped, which we just did here today. And that's pretty much the method that I use personally to set my tree stands up. I like to get up, that 30-foot mark if I can. And I'm a big believer in tree pegs. There's a variety of different, tree steps and ladder sticks that you can use. I personally like to use those little climbing pegs because they're small, they're easy to carry. I mean, I bring in, 12, 15 of those. They fit right in my backpack, and I can climb any tree as high as I want to hunt. So, whereas I ain't got to, mess around with, a 20-foot, set of ladder sticks. It's just my own personal preference, but all the other, tree climbing devices work well. On state property, I will actually use, I'm a big fan of the muddy climbing sticks. What I like about those is, they came in a group of 4. I bought a 5th one for an extra because, again, I like to hunt a little bit higher, than most people do, honestly. And so I bought a 5th climbing stick. But those climbing sticks are awesome because they just rope cinch onto the tree, literally in a matter of seconds. And in about 5 minutes, I can have a tree stand location set. And it's great for hunting state property and places where you're not either allowed to by law, or maybe maybe you got a spot where a landowner doesn't want you, marking trees up and putting pegs in trees. So any location where you can't, put a tree peg in a tree, I like using those muddy climbing sticks. But for the most part, any place where I can, legally put pegs, and here on my own farms, I usually go with pegs most of the time. Here's another good location I've got. What I'm going to show you here is I've made this, as you can see, it's pretty, real thick briars, all through this ridge top here. We're on the top of a ridge, and it drops down to that swamp where I just put that tree stand up. But anyways, I got a trail camera hung up back here, and I've, seen and gotten trail cam pictures of literally hundreds of deer the last couple years that travel this little walking path here that I made with a little handheld weed whacker. I came in here and just, made this path, through these briars, and the deer, and as you can see, it's a whole lot easier walking, for me also, getting to and from stand locations, but also for the deer, as opposed to having to travel, through all that thick briars, which the deer will do if they need to. But when a deer's out on their general travels, they're going to take the path of least resistance, which on this ridge top is no doubt this little path here I made. And I'm going to show you where I got a tree stand set up, and as you can see, there's not any conifer trees really, anywhere near this spot where these deer travel on this trail. But what I did is I made another little path which runs off here to the right, and it's difficult to see, but I got a tree stand set up right over there in that hardwood tree. And as you can see, there's not much there for cover, but I do have a little bit. And the biggest thing about this spot is I put this tree stand about 35 yards off of this main trail. And that tree, although it's hard to tell from the ground level here, that tree stand's about 35 feet off the ground, and I've hunted that spot a lot over the last couple years, had a lot of encounters, and I actually have yet to get picked off by a deer from that spot. And as you can see, that walk path, which again just helps me access the location, you know, very quietly, getting to and out of that spot, and this walk path comes right out to this main trail that these deer are using to go across this ridgetop. And so you don't always have to have, you know, a lot of background cover, but if you're not going to have a lot of background cover, then you're certainly going to want to, you know, get up there a little bit higher. This way here you keep yourself out of the peripheral vision of that deer. You know, deer have amazing eyes. You know, they can smell. You know, they can smell like crazy, and they can hear too. But deer have got better eyesight than what people realize. And what deer are good at is they're good at picking out that movement. You know, not necessarily, you know, picking out your human, you know, silhouette per se until you start moving around. And especially if you're filming hunts like what I do, you know, I self-film on my own hunts, so it's very important that I have either good background cover or get up a little bit higher to keep my movements out of the eyesight of those deer. Well, we hope you picked up a few tips and tactics on how to properly prepare a tree stand hunting location for next deer season, and we also hope you learned a few things about how to properly ground blind hunt turkeys for this coming spring. But that's all the time we've got for this week's show. We want to thank you for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next time, right here on Vantage Point Outdoors.
We want to thank our fine sponsors who make this show possible. Woody Sporting Goods, Matthew Solo Cam. Kishel's Quality Animal Sensing Lures, Magnus Broadheads. HME Products, HHA Sports Optimizer Sighting Systems. K-Tech Designs, Bowfinger Archery. Black Eagle Arrows, Bob's Custom Calls. Rough Ridge, and Beyond Backwoods Productions. Southern Ohio Outfitters and Kentucky Legacy Outfitters. Scent Lock and Covert Scouting Cameras.